be made up.
Yeah, no, I really like that.
Actor and presenter Amanda Holden is a well-known face on stage and TV. Most famous for her role as a judge on Britain's Got Talent. She lives in West London with her husband Chris and their 2 daughters, Holly and Lexi. But growing up, her own family life wasn't so settled.
When I was, I think, 4 or 5, my parents divorced. My father was in the Navy, so I didn't see him, and I lost contact with his side of the family. The only thing I know about my paternal grandfather was that he was a male nurse, which in itself was fairly unique. That and the sad fact that he committed suicide. I'd love to find out about the kind of man he was before it all went so dark for him.
Amanda also wants to investigate a family rumour on her mother's side.
My middle name is Louise, and my great-grandfather was called Louis. And I think there were lots of Louis before that. And my grandmother has always said, "Oh, it's because we're French, dear. We're French." I would love it to be true. My mum and stepfather came to live in Cornwall about 15 years ago, and it's where all our ancestors are from. But I think the thing that really interests me is this rumour of the whole French side of the family. I would love to find a French connection.
Amanda's mother, Judy, has been doing some research into their family's history.
Mum? I was standing by watching for that car.
Now, that is me as a French person.
That's right, yeah.
I was obsessed with dressing up with French. I mean, but it's stereotypical French. I don't think I've ever seen a person in a stripy T-shirt with onion around his neck.
And you won by winking at the judge.
Winking at the judge. Which is a good tip for anybody that comes on Britain's Got
And you've
Talent.
never looked back, have you?
No.
Amanda knows that the name Louis crops up a lot in her mother's family.
So, this Louis, who's my great-grandfather,
That's
and
right.
your grandfather, that's
Louis.
and that was Nanny's dad.
Yeah.
And wasn't he a brilliant swimmer?
Oh, yes, he was. Actually, he won a trophy in 1913 for long-distance swimming in Cornwall. Here. There, it says, what does it say? Can you read it?
Yes, let me just put it into the light. Long-distance swimmer championship.
Oh, don't look in there.
Why?
Because he's in there.
What?
No, he is not!
You are sick. Oh, my God. Judith! Just put him over there.
But anyway.
Sorry, may you rest in peace.
Yeah.
So that's Nanny's dad.
Yeah.
He was a Louis.
That's right. Yeah.
And then was his dad a Louis? So how many greats?
Hang on a minute.
1, 2, 3, 4.
He was obviously the first Louis, because if you look further, that was the one that was born between Colin Thomas, who wasn't a Louis, because
There was no Louis at that
there was
point.
no Louis. He married this
French
woman
woman.
called Radgood, which we think...
That's a funny name.
I know.
Did you know what her surname was?
No.
Radgood.
No.
Radgood.
So I've got... There's a census here, actually.
Radgood.
This is the 1841 census. So where are they?
Can you see? Such
Where are they?
spidery
Where are
writing.
they? Oh,
Okay, there.
there. Yeah, with one out. It should be two, because I've found out since.
Colin's
They were
got two
always-
L's in it.
All the Collins were spelt with two L's.
Okay.
So he was a shoemaker. So we could...
This makes sense to me because I love shoes. It's genetic.
He could have made you them.
Loads of shoes.
Yeah.
And he was 15, 1841, or I'm rubbish at
Yeah.
maths.
So there's about 1790-ish. 1790.
he was born.
Yeah. And on the next one, 1871, we look down here. Oh, there we are.
Spelt
Spelled
right.
properly, yes.
Colin Thomas, Radagood, wife.
But look, you look across, where born? Bordeaux.
Oh my God, I knew we were French.
Yeah. I know.
And from a wine region. And we made shoes. This is two really good mixes. This is going very well.
It'd be brilliant if you could find something out.
What's the fact? My family history is shoes and wine.
Yes!
Brilliant.
Colin Thomas is Amanda's 5 times great-grandfather. But how did her Cornish ancestor come to marry a French woman from Bordeaux?
Hello. So, I'm going to press to southwest, just Cornwall. Colin, 2 L's. Thomas. Search.
Amanda has decided to start by looking at old local newspaper records.
Okay, so that means... Okay, 2 mentions here. The general quarter... No, there's F's there. Are they S's? Sessions? The following prisoners were found guilty. Stephen somebody and Colin Thomas for felonies to be imprisoned for 12 months. What felonies? Colin Thomas? Oh, my God. So he's gone to prison for 12 months. My mum is not going to be happy with that. My nan's going to be even less happy with that. Exeter. So that court is in Exeter. So I need to go to Exeter. Wow.
Amanda's come to Exeter Castle, the site of the city's courtrooms in January 1806, when Colin Thomas was put on trial. She's meeting historian Professor Peter King.
Hi, Pete. I'm Amanda. Nice to meet you. So, Peter, yesterday I found out that my 5th great-grandfather, Colin Thomas, went to prison or did something. It said 12 months for felonies. And I have to say I was completely shocked, but my gut instinct just straight away said, no, there's no way. He's an innocent man. Innocent man. What has he done?
OK, was he innocent? That's the question.
Yes.
Let's go. We're going to have to go back a bit. A felony means it's a crime that you get tried in a jury court for, so it's a major crime. To do that, I need to take you back to a couple of documents that were several years before 1806, when he ended up in court. So I'm going to start you off with a document here, which is an apprentice indenture. And have a look, and the story will begin to reveal itself.
Between Deborah Thomas of the Borough of Truro.
There's his mum.
So that's his mum. And Andrew Stevens of the Borough of Truro, aforesaid coordinator?
Cordwainer.
Cordwainer. What's a cordwainer?
Cordwainer is a shoemaker.
Yes, so
Yeah.
Colin was a shoemaker.
It's an apprenticeship for, and if you read on a bit, you'll find out how long he's committed to do it.
To serve from the date hereof for the term of 7 years. Wow. To be fully complete and ended.
So he can't go away at all without his master's permission.
Oh, this is interesting. Look. Alehouses he shall not frequent. No, he's not allowed in the pub, basically.
No pub.
Oh, no, I've completely lost my place.
Right, so his secret's keep.
Keep, and
all his
lawful commands.
In other words, he's under the hammer
Okay.
at all times.
At all times, readily do and obey. Gosh, I mean, it sounds very
Pretty,
strict.
you're bound in. The master feeds you, and effectively you are in his household and under his control for the rest of your 7 years. I mean, the master would be able to correct him, i.e. punish him, corporal punishment. Occasionally, there are cases in the 18th century when apprentices are beaten to death. So let's just work out how old he is, first of all, when he gets it.
Well, yesterday, on the 1841 census, he was 50. So that means he was born in 1790.
Yep.
So this is 1800. So he's 10.
He's only 10 when he's
That's
going
the
into
same
this.
age as Lexi, my daughter. I still feel like it's not
think-
going to... I think he was
just-
still a good person.
Right,
I kind
okay.
of have a suspicion now what I think.
Let's have a look and see what might have happened to him.
And what's this?
So-
What's that?
Yes, now this is interesting here because this is the Royal Marine descriptive register of people that they recruited.
Recruits like Colin were tempted into the Royal Marines with the promise of the King's Shilling, a cash bounty which they received on joining up.
There he is.
You've got him. Double L, Colin.
Yeah. Colin Thomas. 20th September, 1805. OK, so he was 17. Oh, no, hang on. In 1805...
No, he's
God,
not
he was
even
50.
16, he's 15.
Yeah, so he's saying he was 17.
Okay, so the really important bit is this here.
OK,
That means discharged,
discharged,
claimed.
claimed an apprentice.
Yep.
Claimed an apprentice.
So the master has come back
Andrew Stevens.
because the 7 years are not yet up and claimed him back.
So
he was there
I'll
a
just
couple of
pick that
months.
up.
He gets a couple of months in the Marines. So now we're going to have a look at the calendar of prisoners. So this is the January session,
January
which you read about in the
1806.
newspaper.
It was in the newspaper, yeah.
Now, Colin Thomas.
Oh, my gosh.
aged,
He says age 17,
which he isn't.
which he's not. Charged with unlawfully having knowingly,
By false
by
pretences.
false pretences, obtained the sum of £11 and 11 shillings.
11 guineas, in other words.
Yeah.
So this is
So he
his
stole
signing
somebody's
up
money?
Yeah.
Oh, he's signing up money.
Yep.
To the
And-
Marines?
Yep. And it's a lot of money. It's the equivalent of 22 weeks of a labourer's wage, or in modern terms, at the very least, £5,000, £6,000, £7,000.
Oh, my gosh.
More than he'll ever have thought he could ever have in his
In
hand
his
before.
life,
At
probably.
the age of 15.
Yes.
And
So
that's
he's
why he ended up
here.
here. And he would have gone down to the cells, first of all, awaiting his chance to come up in court and defend himself.
So do the cells still exist?
There are some of them there, yeah.
Scary. So this are the cells, which are now the men's toilets, which is grim anyway. I mean, I can't help but think, I mean, he was only 15. This has now obviously got electricity, so it must have been virtually dark. You wouldn't be able to see anything down here, I wouldn't have thought.
The cells where Colin was held as he awaited trial were still in use until 2003, when the Crown Court moved.
So depressing. And spooky. It feels like I can feel something down here. It's freezing cold.
Crime and punishment expert Professor Barry Godfrey is waiting for Amanda.
Welcome
Nice
to
to
the
meet you.
Exeter courtroom. Amazing place, isn't it?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it's massive.
That's where the judges would have sat, resplendent in their scarlet robes, literally looking down on Colin.
15-year-old Colin.
He's 15, but he's an adult in the eyes of the law.
Really?
So this is where Colin would have stood 200 years ago, just exactly where you're standing now.
Oh, Colin.
And this is the document that we have that describes what happened on that occasion.
So there's his name, Colin Thomas. OK.
See here, this is what he's charged with.
Well knowing himself, the said Colin Thomas to be an apprentice and, as such, not an eligible or proper person to enlist to serve our said Lord the King as a private soldier, but being... Oh, my gosh, look at that! But being an evil, disposed person? Evil?
Yeah. Well, he's taken the money, but he's not going to provide the service.
Yes, but he tried. They came to get him back.
He tried, he wanted to serve, but he's not free to serve. He belongs to his master.
And why... I mean, the thing that I keep wanting to ask is it said that he'd served almost 5.5 years of his apprenticeship, and he only had to do 7.
Yep.
So what person in their right mind...
Somebody who's very miserable, someone who's being ill-treated. Maybe somebody who wants to go off and be a swashbuckling hero and serve the king.
So adventure.
Maybe adventure.
And that's why he lied about his age.
Well, we can see here, actually, in another document, what does happen to him.
Ah, here we go. Colin Thomas, God, this writing. Convicted of a felony, let him be imprisoned in Bridewell, is that?
That's it.
For the space of 12 months and kept to hard labour.
Bridewell is another name for a house of correction. He's there to have his behaviour corrected.
Right.
And the hard labour really is hard labour.
And what would that be then?
So in Exeter Bridewell, it would have been stripping bark. So that's used in a tanning process where the hide is dipped in urine.
Oh.
So he would have been in, you know, pretty miserable,
Smelly,
wet,
awful.
Smelly, yeah, unhealthy conditions.
That's not good.
No.
So what happens to him afterwards, in 1807?
We don't know what happened to him when he came out. Like lots of people, we just lose track of Colin.
No record survives of Colin being released from prison. But Barry has found another document.
So this is in French.
Uh-huh.
Gosh. Why didn't I listen very much in my French? Here we go. I can actually... That's basically English. Acte de mariage. Marriage? Marriage.
Absolutely.
Act of marriage.
Something a little bit more pleasant for Colin is...
So how much longer after he left prison is this?
This is about 10 years.
10 years?
10 years, we lose track of Colin, and then he turns up here.
Oh, and look, hang on. Is that just because it's on the marriage certificate, but it says Thomas Colin there, not Colin Thomas?
The name's reversed. It may be because that's the way the French did it at the time. It may be that he's changed his name to escape his past.
I'm going with that one.
It could be that.
Because, look, I know that her name is Radegund, or however you say it.
Radegond.
Radegund.
Radegond.
Ah, bien sûr. Her name's the right way round.
That's right. So it may be that he's done that just to throw people off the scent so he can put his past behind him.
And that must be her surname, Chabonnel, which was what eluded my mum. This is the point she got completely stuck.
We also know where they married as well.
Oh, my God, where?
That's really tricky to read.
A? Is that an A or a C?
That's A, in Cordreau.
Cordreau.
Yeah.
Cordreau.
Your accent's a bit better.
Cordreau.
Yeah. That's a nice village southeast of Bordeaux.
That is even better.
Yeah. It's a new beginning for Colin.
Yes.
A marriage, a new land, and as a free man.
I absolutely love France. I mean, it's the most... This region is particularly gorgeous. I'm so curious to find out how Colin ended up here. How did a little shoemaker, just out of prison as well, how did he get to Bordeaux?
Amanda has come to the city of Bordeaux, the centre of France's famous winemaking region.
Hello, I'm Amanda.
I'm Carol Duval. Welcome to Bordeaux.
Thank you.
Historian Carol Duval has been researching Colin's time in France.
So I suppose the question is, how did Colin get here?
He got here because he was in Wellington's Peninsular Army.
Oh, my God.
Yes. Well, you know what Wellington said about his army, the scum of the earth. And therefore, you know, he would welcome ex-prisoners.
Yeah.
And a year before he joined up, the Peninsular War had started.
Right.
Napoleon, of course, had declared himself emperor by this time, and he's extending his empire, and his plan is to rule the whole of Europe.
So after he left prison,
Yes.
he joined up again.
This is a muster.
So where is he? Where is he? Ah, Colin Thomas.
Colin's name is on a register of soldiers serving in the army on the 25th of September, 1807.
He joined the 51st Light Infantry.
Okay.
That was a very good regiment. And This gives you some idea of what he would have looked like in his uniform.
Oh, my gosh.
Mind you, when we talk about what he did for 7 years, he wouldn't have looked like that all the time.
No.
They got new uniforms in theory once a year. And by the end of
it
the
would have
year,
been really grotty.
Oh, there was lice.
Oh!
It was just pretty horrendous, in fact.
Oh, my gosh.
He was in the 51st, which means that he took part in some really quite dramatic events.
For 7 years, from 1807, the Peninsular War pitched the forces of Britain, Spain and Portugal against Napoleon's French army. Colin went first to the Iberian Peninsula, fighting his way up through Spain as the Duke of Wellington battled Napoleon's forces, driving them back into France. By the time Wellington reached Bordeaux in 1814, the local population, who was sympathetic to Britain, had turned against Napoleon and welcomed Wellington's army into the city.
So on the 12th of March, the 7th Division, which is the division that Colin is in, marched into Bordeaux. There cheers. He will have seen people actually throwing flowers and blowing kisses.
And that would have been around here somewhere.
All around here, yes, that's right. So his particular brigade of the 7th Division are sent upstream, so that's up that way somewhere, to a string of villages, and there they are billeted. And now we move on to May 1814. At this point, this regiment, the 51st, were about to set sail back to England because, of course, the war was over.
Where is he? Colin. Oh, there's lots of Thomases, always.
Yes.
OK, Thomas. Colin Thomas, 25th of May. Deserted? No.
Yes.
Deserted?
Yes. He must have deserted for a very good reason. He's coming up to 7 years' service.
Yes.
He would have got a pension. The army gave pensions for 7 years'
He doesn't
service.
like to do things that are 7 years. His
No.
apprenticeship was 7 years, and
Yes,
he finished that
yes,
early.
yes.
That's the 7-year itch.
It's interesting when you look at where the headquarters of the 51st was at this point. It was at a little village called Cordreau.
OK, this makes sense now.
And to throw up your pension,
It must be
a
for
very
love.
strong inducement.
Yes.
Yes. It's not fear.
No.
We know he's been through all this. He's coped with it.
Yeah.
As far as we know, he was never in trouble, no regimental courts-martial or anything like that. So he was a good soldier.
So he deserted for love,
That
which
is...
I love. I'm such a romantic. That's incredible. I just think, what a gorgeous man.
Yes.
To follow his heart, but to be that tough and that strong.
He's also lucky he has a trade, doesn't he?
Yes. A cordwainer.
A skill that will be acceptable wherever he settles.
Always get a trade, that's what my nan said.
Absolutely.
This is our family.
I talked about the scum of the earth.
Yes.
Wellington said that.
Yes.
But he also said, see what fine fellows we've made of them. The best army, most military historians agree, the best army we ever put in the field was the Peninsular Army at the end of the Peninsular War.
That is incredible. I don't know why I'm welling up. I just feel so proud.
It's a lovely story. He joined as a lad. I suspect he left as a man.
He left as a man. A lovely, gorgeous man. So we're going upriver, and I think we're doing the same journey that Colin will have done from Bordeaux to Coudreau. And so, which is why it's fascinating for me, because I'm looking all around thinking the landscape's exactly the same. So he will have seen these trees, that chateau. I'm literally seeing what he's seeing. It's incredible.
Coudreau sits on the banks of the Garonne River, 40 miles upstream from Bordeaux. Colin came here in the spring of 1814. Amanda has arranged to meet historian Dr. Gregory Champeau.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Hello, I'm Gregory.
Hello, Gregory. I'm Amanda. So this is Coudreau.
Yeah, it is. Well, you're actually on the port of Coudreau, which
Right.
was the port of Coudreau in the early 19th century. That would have been a very bustling place. I've got postcards. You can see the river full of boats and barges on which the goods were loaded.
Gosh, the landscape's absolutely just
Yeah, you can
unchanged.
see- you
Even
can see
that
the same
cedar
house,
tree
exactly,
there,
yeah.
look, and the house,
Exactly, yeah.
everything.
That's the same thing. So as you know from Bordeaux, this place was quite anti-Napoleon. So the local people would welcome the British troops. And there would be fraternization. And I've got here a very interesting document. So this was written by Lieutenant William Hare. He was in the same regiment as Colin.
It's like a grid.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it's written in 2 directions.
Why?
He wanted to use all paper, actually, so he didn't want to
Waste a tiny inch
Exactly.
of space.
Exactly.
Oh, my goodness. If I remain long in this country and withstand seduction,
Yeah, it's underlined.
it will be wonderful, for I never saw such women in my life. He's writing this to his wife.
Exactly. At a party.
At a party the other
Night.
a handsome friend of mine was
There.
there when one of the daughters of the house gave him privately the key to her bedroom, into which he found
The way.
the way. Gosh, wouldn't that be amazing if that was Colin?
Wow,
It
that
would be.
could have been actually, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so they were
interesting.
beautiful women
Exactly.
and quite naughty.
Ah, maybe.
You see, I know I've inherited that as well from Radagon.
But that shows that they
Oh,
got
I
along
love
very well.
that. Yes. So that's what you mean by fraternisation. It's a polite word for we won't say.
Exactly. So Colin. and
Colin was
Radagon
having a fabulous time. But I have to say, I think Blinking deserved it because he's been through so much.
That's
He's
true.
fought so many battles.
That's true.
The key to somebody's room is the very least he could expect, and a barrel of wine.
Right, that's true. If you want, we could go up the street here to have a look at Radagon's family house.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God! Really? Colin, he wasn't an ordinary man. I think we've established that, but he was a private, he was a shoemaker, so that's quite humble. So I would imagine she had quite humble beginnings.
Well, you're just standing in front of it. That's the actual house.
This house, number 9?
Yeah.
It's a good size.
The whole row of houses here was full of shops. I've got here a picture showing the house. So you can see the balcony was not here.
Yes.
And that was the actual look of the house. And Radagon and her father, Gerard Charbonnel.
What was his name? Gerard?
Gerard.
Gerard.
Charbonnel.
Charbonnel?
And her mother was Catherine Labrousse. This was the high street of Coudreau, linking the market street to the port, where we've been.
And so Colin would not have had very far to come.
No, that's
Just
true.
literally a little walk up the hill.
Exactly, yeah.
For secret trysts. Because I can't imagine she was naughty. She wouldn't have wanted to upset her parents.
no.
So could this have been the house when Colin deserted that she could have possibly hidden him in?
Well, that could have been. We have no evidence for that. But we know he was there. We know he met Radagon. We know they fell in love. And we know they got married about 18 months later, in early 1816. So they got married in the mairie first, which is the
So
town
not-
hall.
Oh, so not the church?
Well, the church afterwards. They had a
Right.
service there afterwards, like a blessing, if you want. So the church is not far away from here. We can have a look if you want.
I would.
Okay.
In France, marriage is always a civil ceremony performed by the mayor. In 1816, Radagon and Colin would have followed this by going to the church for a religious service.
So this is much grander than I thought.
got extra information about the marriage. Because actually they drawn up this prenup agreement.
What?
Well,
a prenup?
Yeah. Well, it's a kind of prenup agreement, yeah, in 1816.
16. Is that usual?
Well, it wasn't usual, but I'd say that in the family of Radegond, it was quite usual. It was kind of Catherine Le Bruce, her mother, did the same thing. So it was like a pattern in the family.
I'm loving this. Feisty women.
Exactly. Maybe they wanted to be independent or...
Yeah.
So you've got a translation here.
Right, so it says, under and before God, Mr. Thomas Collins. I said this. I said he must have turned his name round.
Yeah, now you know probably
Now I know
why.
for absolutely sure, and why.
Because he deserted, so he might have wanted to change his name and to hide a bit.
Here, Radegond Chabonnel, minor, and so just was she underage?
She was under 21. That's what it means.
I wonder if that's why they waited, because he landed at 1814. They got married in 1816. You would think they just waited.
Maybe.
The future spouses declare that there was born out of wedlock a child of the feminine gender, to which they gave the name Catherine, born last the 26th of October, to legitimise and legally recognise her.
That's true.
Out of wedlock, so they didn't wait.
No, they didn't.
Oh, my God.
So you've got the answer to your questions.
But I didn't know anything about her.
Well, that's their first child. Remember the letter we read earlier about William Hare?
Yes.
So maybe that Radegond gave the key to her bedroom too.
There was me thinking, oh, yes, they waited 2 years so they could get married and do it all right and do it in the right way round. Or, what is the right way round? A baby is everything. How amazing. Would French have been a bit more relaxed about that?
I don't know, at the time probably not. So after that, they had Louis, as you know, in 1818. And sometime before 1821, they moved back to England. We know that because they had another child, another girl actually, born in Truro in Cornwall in 1821, Elizabeth. And they had 9 children.
What?
In total.
9?
9, including Catherine, Louis, and Elizabeth and the others. So they went back to England, but there's a French line of your family staying here, obviously.
Yes.
Catherine Le Bruce, for example. So I've got another document here. So this is...
I want to cry, I'm so happy.
So this is a document from 1832.
OK.
It's about Catherine Le Bruce, who's Radegond's mother. So this document is actually listing her property. It says that she has a vineyard.
What?
That's true.
Oh, yes!
Une pièce de terre en vigne. That's what it means.
Pièce de terre en vigne.
And
Where's that?
And we actually have the name of it. It's named Castouré.
Castouré. Castouré.
In the commune of Coudreau.
Tell me it still exists?
It actually still exists.
Do they produce wine from it?
Well, they still produce wine in this area. This is a modern map of Coudreau.
Oh, my God.
So this is the center of Coudreau. And if you look about here, you can read...
Oh, yes, Castoret.
Exactly. So that's the place. And there's still a vineyard there.
So would she have gone there? Would she have worked there?
Well, actually, her mother, so Catherine Le Bruce's mother, was called Radegond.
Right.
Radegond Balan.
Amanda has now discovered 3 generations of her maternal French ancestors, back to her 7 times great-grandmother, Radegond Balan.
The Balans were a family of winemakers. They had several vineyards in the area.
Several.
And one of them was Castouré.
Oh, I love you, Gregory. Oh, my God.
So you could go there if you want.
I am so
now
going
we know
there.
where it is.
I'm going there. They were owners. That's like a dream.
Oh, that's good.
So, Gregory said, come and find Castore Vineyard. So I'm literally at the fork here. There's a road there, road there. It's got to be over here somewhere. It's just incredible. This legacy has been inherited or passed down through all the women in the family. That's in itself unique. 3 generations of women. I couldn't have asked for anything better. My family used to own a vineyard, and it's like heaven. So this is it, Chateau Castore. I love that noise. For Colin to end up here, after so much, I don't know, I think the thing I love about Colin the most is he was a rule breaker. He was very instinctive. He led with his heart. He kind of didn't care if he got into trouble. He did what he felt was right against all the odds, and it all turned out for him in the end. Cheers. Oh. It's actually delicious, you know. Apparently it was a very good year, 2010.
Amanda's now returning to England to investigate her paternal grandfather, Frank Holden. On that side of the family, Amanda has less to go on. After her parents divorced, Amanda lost touch with her father, Frank, and never met her grandfather, Frank Holden Sr., who died in 1983, aged 71.
Hello.
Lovely to see
To see you.
Amanda's arranged to meet her Uncle George, her father's brother. George has brought Frank Sr.'s photo albums with him.
Oh, look at him there.
He used to do the singing and dancing and entertaining.
Because I've always wondered where this
Theatrical.
theatre side of me has come from.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously come from the Holden.
The Holden family, because
Side.
both his brothers were entertainers.
All I know, very sadly, about Frank Sr. is that, you know, I got a phone call from my mum to say that he'd taken his own life. And that's just, you know, it's heartbreaking.
A lot of people were devastated. I'd never met anybody who had a bad word to say against him.
Mm. Gosh, this is very
They're getting a
precious.
bit old and fragile.
No, it's just nice
you
to
can
have,
see.
isn't it?
Now,
Oh, wow. So this is, what year is this, do you know?
That'll be about 1942, during the war.
What did he do in the army?
He was in the Royal Army Medical Corps. He was a psychiatric nurse. He, obviously, with his nursing training from before the war, he was very well qualified. When he started, obviously, he was a nothing, a private, and he ended up as a regimental sergeant major, which is the highest non-commissioned rank you can get. So he really pulled it up through the ranks.
Gosh, he's very handsome. He's like a movie star there.
Now, you see this person here, covered in oil.
Is that oil,
And
not blood?
Oil and water. That's your granddad.
What is he doing?
He was shipwrecked.
Really? Shipwrecked? In the 1940s, was this?
Yes, 1940, exactly, in June 1940.
What was the name of the ship he was on?
He was on a Lancastria.
I've never heard of that.
No, I don't suppose you have. It's one of these things that was kept very quiet during the war.
Okay.
He used to get quite emotional about it, and that was unusual for my dad, because he was a very calm and collected guy.
But look at him, he's
Dishing out a pot of tea to us.
dishing out tea. He literally just nearly drowned at that point, and now he's giving tea to everybody.
He used to say to my brother and I, you know, you've never been in the Navy until you've been shipwrecked.
So I learnt an awful lot about Frank Sr. then, but I think the most poignant and interesting was the fact that he was shipwrecked. So I think I need to find out, or go and find his army records, I suppose. Look up the Lancastria.
Amanda has an appointment at the Aldershot headquarters of the Royal Army Medical Corps with their historian, Captain Peter Starling.
So, Peter, I'm learning about my paternal grandfather, Frank Holden, Sr. I know he was a nurse, and I know he joined the army, and that's about it, really.
Did you ever meet him? Or?
I didn't know him. No, I didn't know anything about him at all.
He was obviously a very exceptional psychiatric nurse.
Dear sir, I have pleasure in informing you that you qualified for the Campbell Clark Medal and Prize. Your medal is being engraved and will be forwarded with a cheque for 3 guineas in the near future.
This medal, which is awarded for the person gaining top marks in his examination.
Oh, wow. In the country?
Yes. He's going to be quite sought after.
See, this is what interests me, because I didn't know. I thought that post-traumatic stress syndrome and, you know, mental health care with the army and all our armed forces was a relatively new idea, and that they just kind of told you to get on with it back then.
No, not by the time that we're looking at here, approaching the Second World War. It was after the First World War, really, with all the soldiers suffering from shell shock, that they realised that this isn't cowardice, it's not lack of moral fibre, it's a hidden wound. And we needed male nurses, needed doctors who were trained to look after our psychiatric cases.
So he would have been snapped up?
So he would have been snapped up. Now, the war clouds are looming, aren't they, through the summer of 1939?
Yes.
And eventually Britain declares war on Germany.
In September.
And I don't know if you can read this here. It says...
Mobilised.
Yeah, 1st of September.
1939.
And then underneath it?
BEF?
British Expeditionary Force.
Frank Holden was one of the first members of the British Expeditionary Force sent to France in September 1939 to protect Western Europe from German invasion. He joined a team of about 200 medics, known as a field ambulance. On the 10th of May, 1940, Germany invaded, unleashing blitzkrieg, lightning war, quickly overwhelming Allied forces. Nursing orderlies like Frank were the frontline medics of their day and would have been in the thick of the action.
26th of May 1940 is the crucial date. The British Army is being pushed back by the Germans towards the French coast at Dunkirk. And as you know, this big flotilla of ships goes over there and rescues the British Army.
Yes.
But look at this date here. That's the 26th of May 1940. But if you look at Frank's date, he doesn't leave France to the 20th.
Until June.
Yes.
So where was he?
Trapped south of Dunkirk in Saint-Nazaire. There's thousands more British soldiers that are there in this little enclave.
So he was left behind?
He was left behind.
So I know that Frank was shipwrecked. Could it have been a ship that was trying to get him home that was actually shipwrecked? The Lancastria?
There's nothing in his record here that says he was on the Lancastria or that he was shipwrecked.
There's no clue. If you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
No.
It looks like I'm going to have to go back to France.
I think so.
Brittany.
I think if you go to Brittany, you might find, hopefully, something else about that.
So I'm heading towards Saint-Nazaire to find out more about my grandfather and his efforts to escape the Germans. And I'm basically following the same route on almost the same mode of travel.
Amanda has discovered that her grandfather was stranded in France after the evacuation of Dunkirk and ended up in Saint-Nazaire, 450 miles further south along the Brittany coast. Amanda is in the port of Saint-Nazaire to find out more about the ship, the Lancastria, which she knows her grandfather was on when he was shipwrecked. She's meeting historian Jonathan Fenby.
So these are the docks, the quayside
Okay.
of Saint-Nazaire. This is what it would have looked like. So it was had been a very lively place, most certainly. And these are men marching down the quayside, trying to get on to a lot of small boats which were moored here, because the big boats which had come in the rescue flotilla, including the Lancastria, were anchored 4 miles or so out there. It's very wide, the Loire estuary at this point, but it's very shallow, so they couldn't get close in, so they had to all be ferried out in much smaller boats.
30,000 service personnel descended on Saint-Nazaire from all over France. Everyone was desperate to find a way out before German forces attacked.
And when the men were here, they all wanted to go out to the Lancastria. They all thought it was the safest place to be. One said it's as solid as the Strand Palace Hotel.
Before the war, the Lancastria had been a luxury transatlantic cruise liner. In 1940, she was requisitioned as a troop ship. Jonathan is taking Amanda to where her grandfather and thousands of others were queuing up to embark on the 17th of June, 1940.
You can see here British troops crossing the bridge, and the ships were waiting for them down here, the smaller ships, waiting here to take them out to the Lancastria and the others. You can see hundreds and hundreds coming round and getting onto the Highlander, which was a destroyer, which was one of the ships, which is here. And we have these photographs because a member of the crew of the Highlander, who was a very keen amateur photographer called Clements, exchanged a pair of socks for a roll of film in Saint-Nazaire, and he took these photographs. But we don't know how many got onto the Lancastria.
What was the normal capacity?
Well, the normal capacity would have been 2,500. The captain reckoned they could take 4,000.
Yeah.
He was told take as many as arrive, basically. The stewards counted them in with a little clicker, but they were overheard to say we stopped counting when it reached 6,000. And some people think it may have been 8,000 to 9,000 got on the ship.
It was absolutely
so
rammed.
It was absolutely rammed.
Frank Holden was one of the thousands who were taken out to the Lancastria and crammed into the ship's holds and on deck. Finally, the captain decided the ship could take no more. The last load from the destroyer Highlander was turned away.
The ship could have left earlier, but first of all, the French had not wanted it to leave, and then the captain made excuses not to go. He wanted an escort, he was afraid of submarines, and so on. And it was really a sitting duck.
At 3:43 p.m., the ship's air raid siren began to wail.
And then a German plane dived down onto the Lancastria, unleashed 4 bombs, 3 of which went straight into the holds, 1 of which, according to some accounts, went down the funnel, blew up, and the whole ship turned into an inferno.
Oh, my God.
Many of those who lost their lives were trapped in the holds of the ship.
A lot of people were killed instantly.
Yes.
For instance, the RAF crew who were in, ground crew who were in a hold, they were all blown up. There were fires all over the place. As one man said, if there was a hell, this is it.
This was it.
This is it.
Those who made it onto the upturned hull or struggled in the water were easy targets for the German planes, which machine-gunned survivors. Just 24 minutes after the first bomb hit, the Lancastria sank. The sinking of the Lancastria remains the single worst disaster in Britain's maritime history. More people lost their lives than on the Titanic and Lusitania put together.
I just can't imagine what it was like for Frank and all those thousands of people. I mean, it must have been absolutely terrifying.
76 years later, there is only a small number of survivors still left alive. Along with the military, British families and civilians were also being evacuated. The youngest person aboard the Lancastria was Jacqueline Tanner, who was travelling with her mother and father, She was 2 years old in June 1940.
Hello, I'm Amanda.
Hello, Amanda. I'm Jacqueline.
Lovely to meet you.
And you. And I'm going to take you out to the wreck site.
How exciting.
Where the Lancastria went down.
Wow.
The ship's sonar reveals the first sign of the Lancastria, sitting upright on the seabed below them.
As you can see on the screen, this is the bow of the wreck, and this is the rear. It's 20 meters deep.
So is it lying on its bottom?
Yeah, it's about 10 meters height.
So is this the deck we're looking at?
The
Yeah,
deck?
this part is the first deck.
A buoy marks the spot where the Lancastria sank. Jacqueline's mother and father managed to get into a lifeboat, but it capsized, throwing them and their 2-year-old daughter into the water.
And Mother looked across at my father and said, "What do we do?" And he went, "Swim." And luckily they were both very good swimmers.
Yes.
And they started swimming.
And what about you?
But I was being held, apparently, in my father's teeth.
One of the other survivors wrote an account of how he rescued Jacqueline.
A lifeboat was quite near and I swam towards it. Suddenly, a woman's agonized cry rang out. "Baby here, baby here." Is this your mother?
Yes.
As an echo, I heard the small voice of a child repeating, "Baby, baby."
That's
Oh,
me.
Jacqueline, that's you. I looked over to see a man and a woman swimming along, holding up out of the sea a tiny mite, a little girl, and I realized it was the same woman who had nearly landed on top of me when the lifeboat tipped up. The sight of this man plodding along in grim silence and the mother who cried out only for the safety of her child warmed my heart, and I struggled on beside them. Suddenly I found a piece of wood, not a very large piece, but it would do fine to put the baby on, I thought. And swimming over, we pushed it under the baby. She looked quite comfortable, and I now felt that I must get away from those cries of distress, and I swam away. Do you know who that was?
No,
You never knew who that was?
I didn't. No.
But he saved your life.
He did. Well, he helped save the life,
Yes.
and Mother and Father then were 3 hours in the water, and then they were eventually picked up, and we were being transferred to the Highlander, which had a...
So the Highlander, I have a picture here.
You do?
Because my grandfather, Frank, there he is.
So this is on the Highlander?
This is on the Highlander, and he's covered in oil, like you must have been. And he's wrapped in a blanket. Other people are wrapped in a blanket, and this is the thing that...
Pouring tea.
He's pouring tea, a good old British cup of tea, and he must have been on the same ship as you. He must have been.
The Highlander.
And he was a lucky one as well. He survived.
"4,000 men, women and children are known to have lost their lives. But the figure is thought to be much higher, as there was no accurate count of the thousands crowded on board the Lancastria.
I think you and my grandfather were extremely lucky to get out of there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But the thing I don't really understand, Jacqueline, is that this is a bigger disaster than the Titanic, and yet I've never heard of it.
At the time when this happened, of course, it was too big a disaster to publish. We have here a book. There's a piece on there you might like to read.
Okay. So this is Winston Churchill's
Winston Churchill.
diaries. One frightful incident occurred on the 17th at Saint-Nazaire. The 20,000-ton liner, the Lancastria, with 5,000 men on board, was bombed and set on fire just as she was about to leave. When this news came to me in the quiet cabinet room during the afternoon, I forbade its publication. Here we go. Saying the newspapers have got quite enough disaster for today, at least. I had intended to release the news a few days later, but events crowded upon us so black and so quickly that I forgot to lift the ban. I can see that it was done for morale, for the people in Britain, but now it needs recognition.
Yes, it did need recognition.
There he is.
And there he is.
But isn't it amazing that you both survived a massive disaster and
he was not very old.
He wasn't very old, you were tiny. I just like to think that he may have seen you because it must have been a
Well, he
unique
probably
thing having
did.
a little tot like you on.
It's a small world in some ways, isn't it? It's taken a long time for us to find out that we've got something in common.
HMT Lancastria. Opposite this place lies the wreck of the troop ship Lancastria. Learning about Frank's story has just been incredible for me. He was a survivor. He was one of the lucky ones from this disaster. And I hope that this story will keep the memory alive of those 4,000 who didn't make it back home. It's odd that I never got to meet him because that goes against what I feel about him now and what I've learnt about him. I think the sad irony is that, you know, my grandfather took his own life in his 70s. He looked after so many mentally ill people, endured so much during the war, but wasn't able to save himself. Maybe all the trauma he witnessed and everybody else's problems were too much for him to bear.